Hey y'all, this is Treacherous Slayer coming at y'all with another video, and before we get started, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So today, I'm going to be reviewing Kimi, the movie. It was released this year, and it's a crime thriller, and it's starring Zoe Kravitz. Now, firstly, the movie starts off with the CEO of the Amygdala company, Brad, giving an interview to a news anchor about how innovative Kimi is, which is a product similar to Alexa or Siri. Now, after that's over, he turns off his computer and leaves his makeshift office space. Then he goes to the kitchen where his wife is drinking a cup of coffee, and you can tell by their conversation that it's strictly business and nothing more really. He then goes to his son's bedroom and then stares blankly at him as he caresses him softly. I can tell by his stare that something's off with him. Anyways, we then get introduced to Angela, who is the main character who works for the Amygdala company. She works in a tech support. She starts off her day with doing a typical morning routine as she sips her cup of coffee, as she glances at her neighbors that live across from her. And by the layout, they all live in high-rise apartments. One guy in particular keeps an eye on her as he sips his coffee as well. Now the other guy below him, she's apparently dating him, and his name is Terry. They have a brief chat about grabbing a bite before work. They plan on meeting after that, but it doesn't go as planned. As we notice during her routine, she has to take her meds for a condition known as agoraphobia. For those who don't know what that is, it's a phobia that makes you fear places and situations that might cause panic, helplessness, or embarrassment. It's an anxiety disorder that develops after one or more panic attacks. We see that Angela suffers from this terribly, as she has a panic attack before meeting Terry. Due to that happening, she couldn't meet him and sadly glances out the window where Terry was no longer waiting. Anyways, the day goes by, then it's night. As Angela wraps up a few technical difficulties with Kimi, with the help of Darius, her coworker, who is very funny, by the way, she texts Terry to come over. He then accepts, and they have a brief moment of passion. Fast forward a little after that, he brings up a Thai restaurant that's not too far from where they live. Angela negates everything he says, since we all know she's afraid to leave her home. Terry knows about her condition, but gets frustrated and leaves. Angela then glances out her window at his apartment and notices outbursts as he closes his curtains. He was definitely pissed off. She then returns to her desk to finish off issues with Kimi, and that's when she stumbles across a recording that had a crime taking place. She replays it several times to make sure she's not letting her condition get the best of her. She confirms that this crime in particular was an assault taking place, as she used the machine to clear up the sound and we could all hear what was happening. Angela is determined to get justice for this woman. The next day, she then FaceTimes the boss of her department and tells him about what she heard. He's not trying to compromise with her at all and tells her to just forget about it and it's out of their hands. She then ends the call as she persists to find a solution. As she faces this dilemma, she suffers from a toothache. She FaceTimes a doctor that tells her she needs to come in because she can't treat it herself. She denies his request, obviously, as she stubbornly hangs up. She then calls Terry for help with what she discovered, and he suggests she go to the FBI. She then tries to call the executive of the company, Ms. Chowdhury, for help with the crime. She eventually gives up after a few tries. Then she FaceTimes Darius, who was drunk and annoyed about her lying on her Instagram, which was a funny dynamic between the two. He then gives in to her request for admin user and password, which she needs to get all the evidence from the crime. She then ends the call and proceeds to download the evidence to her flash drive. As she's doing that, she gets a call from her therapist and answers it. She talks to her briefly about how she's dealing with her condition. Frustrated, Angela hangs up the FaceTime session and proceeds to work out while she listens to the recording of the crime committed on Kimi. The woman who was assaulted name was Sharon. As Angela continues to listen to Sharon's recordings, she skips over the one she already heard and listens to the final two. We can hear that Sharon is scolding and confronting her rapist, Brad. Yes, Brad, the CEO of the company Angela works at. Yeah, that Brad. Sharon threatens Brad that if he doesn't come clean about what he did to her, he's gonna pay. After that, we reach the last recording, and as we listen, Angela visualizes what's happening to Sharon as she listens. We then see a brief sequence of hitmen murdering Sharon, and this causes Angela to panic from the realization. As she struggles to regain and compose herself, she finally receives a call from Miss Chowdhury about the crime, and Miss Chowdhury calms her down by telling her to meet her at her office with the FBI. It was convincing enough to have Angela come to her senses and do what she refused to do since the beginning of the film, which was leave her home. Angela takes her medicine and then takes a deep breath, and she leaves her apartment. As she's making her way out of her building, the guy who lives above Terry is watching her closely with binoculars, and can I say that was very sus of him. As she makes her way through the busy streets of Seattle, she finally arrives at a bus that will take her to the Amygdala. Prior to all this, Brad caught wind that someone knows about his dirty secret. He then hires some more hitmen to take out Angela. Now, as Angela arrives at Amygdala, she's thrown off by the building requesting her a retinal scan to enter. She eventually obliges and then the door opens. She enters cautiously as the machine gives her a key card for the doors. That will definitely come in handy in a moment. She then makes her way up to Miss Chowdhury's office, and Miss Chowdhury's assistant tells her to wait. A few minutes pass, and Miss Chowdhury finally graces us with her presence, as she tells Angela to follow her to her office. Now, Angela came to her office under the impression of talking to the FBI about Sharon's murder. Miss Chowdhury then proceeds to ask tedious questions, and Angela is getting annoyed by the rhetoric. Miss Chowdhury then tries to switch up the conversation by saying she might be overthinking it since Angela is being hesitant to pass over the evidence. With good reason, may I add. We then find out a shocking detail about Angela's past and that she's a surviving victim of an assault and was wrongly accused, and the guy got away with it. Miss Chowdhury puts up a front saying she sympathizes for her and compliments her by saying she's a strong, brave woman. She then tells Angela that she's going to call the FBI and leaves Angela in the office for a few minutes. Angela's on edge, right? As I was. This whole dynamic was sketchy. As Angela takes a bathroom break, she's still taking quite a long time to contact the FBI. Now, y'all, the red flags are flagging at this point. We then find out that Miss Chowdhury shiesty ass set her up, and Angela realizes this as she notices two strange men rushing toward her, and she makes a run for it. Now, this is where her planning goes left real quick. Y'all, my anxiety was through the roof as the hitman continued to chase Angela out of the building. She manages to lose them for a brief moment and derails her path toward the FBI building. Realizing that there's a possibility that the enemy is tracking her, she turns off her location on her phone. That only helped her for a few minutes as she arrives at the FBI building. Much to her surprise, there's a protest going on and she proceeds to dump her phone. Good thing she has the drive with the evidence still intact in her pocket. As she tries to make her way to the entrance, the hitman pull up right behind her and in a bold move try to kidnap her in the middle of a protest. That was a real ballsy move. Luckily, some of the protesters weren't having it. It took about 4 or 5 of them, but luckily Angela was able to kick one of the hitmen in the face as she struggled to unlock the trunk door, and the bystanders helped her out as she fled from the scene in desperation. What I love about this film is the director shows the importance of the bystander effect. Look that up after the video. Anyways, Angela is still on the run as she notices a similar van to the one she was just thrown in. She cautiously surveys the scene as she proceeds to cross the street. Although she was alert, she was still caught off guard by being struck with a tranquilizer as the hitman carried Angela to the van. Now, I thought this was going to be the end for Angela Childs, though it seemed that way as the hitman arrived at her apartment building as they planned to make her murder seem like a break-in. That doesn't go as planned. As they make their way to the entrance, we're introduced to the sus guy who lives above Terry, Kevin. God bless Kevin because his quick thinking helped Angela escape up to her apartment. Kevin was stabbed in the process, which had me worried that he was killed. Although Angela was able to make it to her apartment by a hair since she was being chased at the same time, the head assassin, Revis, was already waiting for her inside. He then grabbed her and threw her into the living room. He then unlocked her door and let his henchmen inside, along with the bleeding Kevin in their clutches. Now all hope seems to be lost when Angela and Kevin are cornered in the living room as Revis interrogates Angela about the files of the crime. Revis slaps her once and proceeds to yank off the sweater that was concealing Kevin's bleeding wound. Fearing that Revis was going to shoot Kevin dead, she tells him that the files are on her laptop. As Revis and his henchmen check the laptop, he orders one of them to watch Angela and Kevin closely. As Revis is searching for the files, a miracle happens. Angela's mom FaceTimes her, and Angela, using her quick thinking, orders Kimi to answer, and her mom sees the two strangers at the computer and is obviously worried. Revis then hangs up the call, and Angela orders Kimi to turn off the lights and turn up the music to max volume. She then slams her coffee table until one of the henchmen, catching him off guard as she darts towards the broom closet and climbs into the roof of her apartment. Revis shoots a couple shots into the roof since he knows she's up there. Little do they know, Angela grabs a hold to a nail gun that helps her in this dilemma. Revis manages to break open the broom closet where Angela was waiting in the roof. He then sends one of the henchmen in after her, but that backfired and earned him a nail to the head from Angela, killing him instantly. Hearing the commotion from the closet gave Kevin the perfect opportunity to stab the other henchman in his chest. Angela then fires more nails towards Revis as he blindly shoots towards the roof. Revis noticed a nail went through his wrist as he yells to the stabbed henchman in confusion. Angela then shoots more nails into his back and killing him with one to the head. The stabbed henchman tries to make a run for it to the door, and that stupid decision earns him a nail shot to the neck. As he collapsed to the ground, Terry rings the doorbell as she ends the henchman's life with a nail to the head. She orders Kimi to call 911 as she then answers the door for an apologetic Terry. As she tells the dispatcher of the crime, Terry hands her a bouquet of flowers. She then turns to make sure Kevin's okay as she thanks him and asks his name in the middle of it. We learn that he's just like her and he knew she was in trouble since she never leaves her home. Now y'all, this was an exhilarating watch. And we're then turned to a sequence of the camera just observing Angela's apartment empty, and we see in addition to her apartment a table with 4 chairs, showing that Angela's finally moving past her fears and she's inviting people over. Most likely just Kevin and Terry though, and her mom probably. So Angela didn't change her hair color because it was blue throughout the movie. She changed it to pink. And she finally walks out to the food truck and meets Terry there as they grab a bite, and the movie ends there. I would definitely recommend you all to watch this because this was a hell of a film. The director was spot on with the detail and the pacing was perfect. I would give it a 10 out of 10. So, and if you want to watch this, you could catch it on HBO Max, because that's how I was able to watch it. So, and I definitely recommend it. If you guys have any other movies you want me to react to, don't forget to comment on them. Thank you.